Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and today I'm super excited to share with you my latest tutorial, and it's for a Loomigurumi Olaf. So he is quite a giant snowman. The one on the left here was my very first prototype that I used to create him, and then on the one on the right is the one that I'm going to be showing you in the tutorial. So really they're made the exact same way. The only difference is the one on the left has rubber bands for the buttons, and then the one on the right has actual buttons. So this is actually just the first part of the tutorial in which you're going to learn how to make only the head. So it is a little bit time consuming just because he's so big. He stands about 8.5 inches tall, maybe closer to 9 inches if you count his little twig hair on top. But I'm really pleased with the way that he turned out, and I hope that everyone else is too. To make your Olaf head, you're going to need a hook of some sort. So I have the Rainbow Loom metal hook, but you can use a crochet hook or whatever you have on hand. I'm going to be using a twist tie to help me get my magic ring started. And then Rainbow Loom does have a new product they came out with called the Loom. That is another tool to help you start magic rings. I have some polyfil I'm going to be using for my stuffing. And then for my eyes, I've decided to use these wiggle eyes or Google eyes. They're about 8 millimeters in diameter. And you can also use safety eyes or whatever you think looks good or whatever you have available to you. You're going to need some clips or stitch markers. And then as far as the band counts, now this is just for the head portion, you're going to need 271 white, 22 brown, 27 black, and 30 orange. I'm going to begin by making a magic ring of 6, so for that I have 7 white rubber bands. I have a clip that I'm going to use as a stitch marker, and then to get my magic ring started I'm going to use a twist tie. So Rainbow Loom actually has a new product out called the Loom, and that is designed to help you start magic rings. So the next time I make a magic ring I'll show you how to use that just so you can see the difference. But I know that not everybody has that, so that's why I wanted to show you the twist tie, which most people have laying around their house somewhere. And of course you don't have to use anything, you can just use your fingers. So I'm going to take my twist tie, put it right next to my hook. And then I want to take my first rubber band, I'm going to triple this. So it goes on, twist, back on, twist, back on one more time. That'll give you 3 loops. Just bend this in half. And that's just going to pinch those 3 loops together and give you something to grab onto. Then you're going to take your first band, it's going to pull through. Back on your hook you'll have 2 loops, and one pulls through the other 2. Then from the front, you're going to push through those same 3 loops, pull through your second band, get the other end back on your hook, and you can see here how I sort of use my finger to hold this back out of the way. So you might want to do that. You're going to have your 3 loops, one pulls through the other 2. Again, from the front, every time you're pushing through, pull through your next band, back on your hook, one through the other 2. This is my 4th band. Fifth, and then one last time. And then you're just going to remove your twist tie. You want to spread these out, make sure that they're fairly evenly spaced around that circle. And then you can take your clip or your stitch marker and attach it to the band that's on your hook. So now if you count your stitches around your magic ring, you should have a total of 6. So your stitches are these little sideways V's that are on the outside edge of your magic ring. And so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me just spread this out. 5, and then the last one, whatever your stitch count is, the very last one is always going to be the one where your clip or your stitch marker is. So in this case, for us, it's number 6. In row 2, you're going to need a total of 12 bands, and we are going to do an increase in every stitch. So I'm going under my first stitch. Again, I'm always going front to back, pulling through my first band, one through the other two, and then I'm going under that very same stitch once again, pull through my second band, and that's what's considered an increase. Moving around to my next stitch, and you can see I'm always working in a counterclockwise direction here. So we have one, and then again back through for the increase. Again, two in the next. So this is actually a very typical thing to do. Usually after your magic ring, you do an increase in every stitch most of the time. Some patterns are different. But basically we're just really trying to widen this out. And then in the last stitch where my clip is, I have 2 bands left here. And I'm just going to take my clip, move it to the band on my hook, and now we should have doubled our stitch count to 12. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then number 12 is on my hook. In row 3, you're going to need 14 bands. I'm doing the pattern of 5 single crochets and an increase, and then that repeats. So we're doing 5 singles here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have our first increase. So that's 2 in the same stitch. And then we have 5 more. So I'm not going to count this one. But basically the pattern that I created is just doing the increases on the sides of the head. And so it's just going to gradually get bigger. And I tried to keep the increases lined up so they were pretty close to being on top of one another. So in that very last stitch we have our second increase. In row 4, you're going to need 16 bands. We're doing 5 singles, an increase, 6 singles, an increase, and then another single. So we're doing those 5 singles to start again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then the first increase, and then there's going to be 6 singles, so I had to space these out. You'll see that the spacing changes a little bit every time, just so it works out that the increases are falling in the same places in every row. Now in the second to last stitch we have our second increase. And then in that last stitch we have a single. So you should notice as this starts to grow, where you're doing your increases, it's sort of going to fold there. It's kind of hard to tell right now because it's such a small thing, but as it grows you'll notice. In row 5 you're going to need 18 bands, so we're doing 5 singles, an increase, 7 singles, an increase, and then 2 singles. So once again we're doing 5 to start. So I guess I'm not going to bother to count every time. Honestly, I'm never sure if people find it helpful when I count along or if they find it annoying. So you can feel free to leave me a comment as to what you prefer. But if you have all your bands laid out the way that I do, it's definitely very helpful, and then you don't have to worry about counting in your head. So that was 5, and then our first increase. And then we're going to do 7. Just lost that one there. Occasionally that happens. And then this is going to be your third to last stitch. That's going to get your next increase. And then in the last 2, we're going to do singles. You'll need 20 bands for row 6, so we're doing 5 singles, an increase, 8 singles, an increase, and then 3 singles. So again, we're still starting with 5. It's the pattern that we've been following. And you should really notice this starting to gradually widen. When I was first designing this, I thought it was going to turn out much smaller than it actually did. Here in the 6th stitch we have our first increase. And then we're going to do 8 singles to get us around to the other side. It's funny, when you first start out with a magic ring, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be that big. And there was quite a lot of trial and error going into getting this to be the right shape. I looked at a lot of Olaf pictures and stuffed animals and that kind of thing. So I think it turned out to be a pretty decent likeness of Olaf. At least I hope that everybody else feels that way. So now I'm around to the other side here. I have my next increase. And then that leaves us with 3 singles. In row 7, you're going to do just 1 single crochet into every stitch, so you'll need 20 bands. So since it's pretty straightforward, I'm going to go ahead and let you do this part on your own. So you can pause your video and I will see you back here in a minute. In row 8, you're going to need 24 bands, So you're going to do 4 singles, 2 increases, 8 singles, 2 increases, and then end on 4 singles. So we're only doing our 4 singles to start this time. We had been doing 5 for basically all of the other rows. So this is going to get a little bit wider still than we've been doing since we're doing the 2 increases in a row. So in this 5th stitch, we're doing our first increase, and then in the 6th stitch, a second increase. And then we're going to do 8 single crochet. That's going to get us all the way around to the other side. And when we get to the next row, we're actually going to start to use some black. I'm going to start at the top of the mouth. Now the next one gets the increase. And then right away a second increase. And then 4 singles. Now before I continue to grow the head any taller, I'm going to make the stick pieces and attach them, because the taller that the piece gets, the harder it's going to be. So I'm just going to show you how to do 1 out of the 3. I have 6 bands for each of the shorter pieces, and then I have 8 bands for the taller one that's going to go in the center. So I'll just show you how to make the tallest one. And then the others are the exact same thing, only you're just using the 6 bands. So what you're going to do is take your first band and quadruple this. So you place it on your hook, you twist and put it back on 3 times, and that's going to give you your 4 loops. Now, I will warn you, this is on the tight side to make these. You're taking your second band, and this time you're going to double it. So just twist and put it back on 1 time. You're going to slide that to the end of your hook, and I want these loops to be relatively even. And then very carefully, what I like to do is hold my hook this way. I'm leaving this pinched in my fingers. I'm going to take these 4 loops, and I'm just going to pull 2 at a time. You could do all 4 if you wanted to. Again, I'm not letting go of this. And then I'm sliding the other 2 loops back on. And then what I like to do every time is just sort of grab the whole section here and wiggle it, and just try and make sure that it's kind of evenly spaced on that band. So we're just going to continue to double, slide to the end. Now when it's short, it's a little bit harder to grab, so I like to just flip this to the outside. Again, hold my hook just like this, pinch this in my fingers, and you can sort of hold on to the very end and pull it out as you're pulling up, and that's just going to help from your hook getting caught. Again, just going to do a little wiggling. Now once this piece gets longer, it's going to be easier to pull through. For example, I doubled this, and now when I actually have something to grab onto, I'm just going to keep my hook in this horizontal position, slide through, and back on. And if at any point you feel like you're really struggling with this, with holding it all together, it's a lot of maneuvering with your fingers, you could take a clip and attach it to the one end. That's going to let you let go, and then you'll have your two hands to work with instead of trying to hold it. So it's really up to you, however you feel most comfortable doing it. We have two left here for the center. And then what you're going to do is just carefully remove your hook. It's pretty tight, so it should hold the band. If you are worried about it coming apart, you can always just take a stitch marker or a clip and put it around these bands. You're just going to set that to the side, and then you're going to make two more with a band count of 6. Now I'm going to attach my stick pieces on the top of the head, so I have my 3 white rubber bands. And where your clip is, that is going to be the back. So I have the front facing me here to attach them. The tall one is going to go right in the center where the magic ring is. So I'm just going to reach up through, push my hook right out the very center, and I'm going to take the one side, just get the 2 loops on. Now if you wanted to, you could add a clip on the other side if you're worried about that coming all the way through. As a matter of fact, let me just add a stitch marker onto that, just so I'm sure that it's not going to come through. Make sure you get it on both loops. And I'm going to pull the 2 loops through to the inside. And I'm going to come out the very next spot over. Get those other 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to pull those 2 loops to the inside. So now I have 4 loops on my hook. I'm going to take this white band, pull through all 4 loops, and then pull one through the other and make that nice and tight slip knot. So then you can see we have 1 attached. And so what you would do is just repeat that process for the other 2. So you would just go a little bit over to the right, pull the both sides down through and make the slip knot inside, and then the same thing over to the left. Now when you have all 3 of them attached, you're going to have these loops inside, and what you can do if you wanted to for just a little added security is you could take the loops and just tie them together and just make a knot in a couple of them here. So it's probably going to hold just fine with your slip knot, but it never hurts to have a little bit of extra security. Next I'm going to add the eyebrows, and you can use from about 1 to 3 bands for this. I'm just going to use 1 single band. It's just going to be the easiest thing to do. And I'm actually just going to use C-clips to attach it on the inside. You can also use an additional band and make a slip knot. So what you're going to do is make sure that your loose band is at the back. So this is the front of our face. And you're going to go to the center point, and here's our magic ring. You're going to go down, I would say you'll have your 1 band coming out of your magic ring. If you go to that next row down, go from the inside and push out. Take 1/2 of that band, pull it through to the back, and then you want to go maybe like 1, I would say 2 spaces over. Grab the other end, pull that through to the back, so you're going to have your 2 loops. And then here's where you can either take a clip or as I said, you can take an additional band and you can make a nice and tight slip knot. If you want to use extra precautions, you can do both, but I think I'm just going to use the clip. And then you'll have a little bit of wiggle room here. That's the nice thing about the clip too, it makes it a little bit looser so it's not pulled so tightly against. And then you're going to do the same thing for the other eyebrow. So I would skip 1 or 2 spaces here. Pull one side through, move a couple spots over, pull through to the back, and then on the inside, again, take your additional band or your clip here, and just make sure that you get both sides attached. Actually, you can see that one just slid right over the other one, but it didn't actually go inside the clip. So let me just fix that, because that will come apart. There we go. And now we have our eyebrows attached. In row 9, you're going to need 17 white bands and 7 black. So we're going to do 7 single crochet in white and then 7 in black, but these are going to be just slightly different. They're going to go in just the inner loops and then 10 white. So we're going to do our first 7, and these are all single crochet, so no increases or decreases. This is actually going to be the widest row, and then eventually we're going to start to do decreases. Now we're on to our black here, so we're doing just the inner loop. So we had been going through from front to back under both loops. This time we're just going under the first loop and pushing out through the middle of the V. So we're changing colors, which means we need to do a slip stitch. And all that is pulling through everything on your hook. Get the other end back on, so you have just the 2 black, and one pulls through the other. Again, the next stitch, just the inner loop. So we're doing that for all the black. Single crochet and inner loop. So this is obviously our first row of the mouth. And the reason we're doing just the inner loops is we're leaving the outer loop empty so we can go back and form the lip and the teeth stemming off of those outer loops. So this is our last black. Now we're going to go under both loops. We are going to do another slip stitch, so through everything on your hook. Now you'll have just the 2 whites and one through the other. And now we should have 9 remaining here because we had a total of 10 white at the end. I feel like my head is going to brush against my bands and knock them out of place here. This is actually a very large Olaf, so I'm probably going to struggle with that through the whole tutorial as it starts to grow here. So here's our last 3. And I'll just move my clip. So we have our first part of the mouth started. In row 10, you're going to need 16 white bands and 6 black. And we are going to start to do some decreases, so that's where you put 2 stitches together. And I have those marked with a clip. So we're doing 3 single crochets to start with white. And then we're going to do our first decrease. So what you do for that is you take your hook and you go through the middle of the V, so not the inner loop but the outer loop. So push through, leave that on your hook, pull back towards yourself and do the same thing in the next stitch. Just grab that outer loop, take your band, you're going to pull through both. You might have to maneuver your hook a little bit there. You want to try and get the band about evenly spaced in between those 2 stitches, and then 1 through the other 2. We have 2 more single crochet with white. So 1, and here's our last white before the black. And when you do a slip stitch, it creates something that I call a false stitch. So we had done a slip stitch in the previous row where we changed our colors. So you may think that this first black here is a stitch, but it actually isn't. If you look to the side, you can see here how that's looped on the other part of that band, and that's from doing the slip stitch. So you're ignoring that, go to the next one over, that's the true stitch. We're going to change colors, so we're doing a slip stitch, and 1 through the other. So now the rest of the row here is going to be regular single crochet with black. And then when we get to the end of the black again, we're going to have to deal with that slip stitch from the previous row, plus we're going to have to make our own slip stitch as well. So this is my last black band. Now I do have 1 black stitch left. I'm going under that, and we are going to change to white. So I'm pulling through everything, and 1 through the other. Now this next white here, this little part that sort of looks like it's going more vertical than horizontal, that is our false stitch, so you're ignoring that. Now the next 2 stitches go together as a decrease, so just go in that outer loop, pull back towards yourself, go in that second outer loop, and again you're going to pull through the first 2, get that evenly spaced, and then 1 through the other 2. And then the rest of the way around we're just doing regular single crochets. So I know I kind of threw a lot of new stuff at you in this row with the decreases and having to deal with slip stitches and everything. And I always try to clearly explain everything I'm doing. If you've been looming for a while, you probably know all this stuff, but I'm really never sure who is watching my tutorials, so I'm not sure at what stage anybody is in their learning process. So in the last stitch here, and just move that clip. In row 11 you need 17 white and 5 black. We're doing just 1 single crochet into each stitch, so nothing special in this row. You will still have to do your slip stitches. We're not doing any more decreasing just yet. So that last white band should be going under a white stitch. Again, ignore the first black, that's not a true stitch. Go under the next, we're doing a slip stitch. And then we're having 4 more black. So you should notice every row we're doing 1 less black. So that's going to narrow the mouth. and get that triangle shape that we need. Now the last stitch again here is going to be black, but I'm actually switching to white. So a slip stitch, and then once again you're ignoring this first white. That's not the true stitch. Just remember, if we changed colors on the previous row, that's where you're going to find those false stitches every time. Now it's just one in each for the rest of the way. Let me just move those over. Makes it a little bit easier for me. I'm going to switch gears here and show you how to make the nose next, because as we continue to grow our headpiece, it's just going to keep decreasing and it's going to make the opening much smaller. So while we still have this nice big opening, I'm going to show you how to make the nose so we can attach that. So I do have the whole section laid out here. I figured it would be easier just to show you it all at once since it's just that small piece. So you're going to need 30 bands in total. We're going to start with a magic ring of 3, do an increase in every stitch, 2 rows of single crochet, and then in that last row we're doing 2 singles followed by an increase and repeat. So I am going to use the twist tie once again. I know I said I would show you how to do it on the Loom, but there actually is no magic ring of 3 for that. So you're taking your first band and you want to triple this on your hook. So you have 3 loops. And then you have 3 additional bands. You're just going to pull through one at a time. You can take out your twist tie. Now you are going to have a very tiny magic ring, and you'll see the bands basically look like they're only about halfway around that circle. So just do your best to try and spread them out. And then I'm going to take my clip and get it on the band that's on my hook. So your first stitch is going to be pretty far over. You can see here where my band ended. I have to go all the way over here. So go under both loops. We're doing an increase in every stitch. So that's 2 for each. So over to the next stitch. Let me just get my clip kind of out of the way there. I think the smaller your magic ring, the harder it kind of is to work with because it wants to close up. Now where my clip is the 3rd stitch. So once again, let me just move this clip off of there for the moment. I feel like it's kind of in my way, so 2 for that. And then I'll reattach my clip. Now as I said, the magic ring really gets closed off, or actually it's not the magic ring anymore, but the stitches really want to fold in. So I would suggest just taking a second and spreading that out so you can see your stitches a little bit better. So you should have a stitch count of 6 right now. So we're doing 1 single crochet into each. And of course, if you wanted to make a longer nose or a shorter nose, you could always add or subtract rows. So here's my last one for this row. And you can also do some readjusting when you're done. Like at the tip here, you see how it's sort of a little bit crooked. You can do a little readjusting there as well. So now I have another row of single crochet, so 6 more bands. Oops, I only made it under one loop there. Move my clip. And then in the last row here, we're doing 2 singles. And then in that third stitch around, we're doing an increase. And then we're repeating that, so there's 2 singles. And again, I'm just going to take my clip off of here. In this very last band, we're doing an increase. The next thing we'll do is to form the upper lip. So for that, you're going to need 21 bands. So we're doing 2 single crochet, and then 3 increases followed by 2 more singles. And then in the second row, you're going to do 10 singles, and then you'll need that 1 additional band to tie it off. So we're going to start on the right hand side. Now the loops we're going to go through is just going to be these single outer loops. If you remember, we did the black row for the mouth just on the inner loops, so now we have the outer loops available. So you're going to start all the way over on the right. Make sure you go in that very first one in the corner, and we're going from the inside out here. We're doing 2 single crochet, and you're going to definitely feel it's a lot looser, so just be careful as you're doing this to try and make sure you're not pulling it at all. You don't want to pull it out of shape. So then we have 2 single crochet in that same stitch for our first increase, and then we have the next increase. It is going to get kind of tight and bunchy here, but we're doing that so we can get that upper lip to push outward there in the middle. So we have 1 more increase, and then I have 2 singles. Now we're going to work our way back with the second row. Let me just move these into one pile here. But we have to connect it somehow on this side, because if we just started to go backwards now, you can see how it's going to leave this gap. So what I'm going to have you do is take this loose band off your hook. You can just hold it in your fingers. If you feel like you might lose it or you want to have another free hand, you can add a clip. I'm going to have you go from the outside here in through this stitch right here. That's on the black row. It's going to be tight. You're going to just go through under 1 or 2 loops, and then you want to pick up that loose band and you're going to pull it underneath to the outside. So where we connected it here, we're going to count that as our first stitch. So I'm leaving this on my hook, and from the bottom here you're going to push under those 2 loops. As I said, we're counting that as our first stitch. So you're going to pull underneath. It's actually pretty tight. So underneath those 2 loops, back on, and 1 through the other 2. So as we work our way back, it's going to feel awkward because we're going backwards, but you're still going through that same side from the bottom up. We're doing just 1 single crochet into each stitch, and just make sure that you're getting through every one because they are a little bit tight, as I said, from doing our increases. So I know this is probably going to feel kind of strange to most of you, but this is the way we have to do it. So we have a total of 10. So here's number 10. And then we do have to connect this to the head. So what I'm going to have you do is go, let's see, maybe just to this next loop here. I'm going to just kind of fudge it here and just pick a loop or 2 to go under. Take my last band, I'm going to pull through everything, make a nice and tight slip knot, and then I'm just going to reach from the inside, grab the loop, I'm going to pull that through to the inside, and I think as a little added security I am going to put this underneath some of the loops on the inside just to keep it tight. So I'll just slide this through. And then you can adjust that accordingly. Try and make it nice and smooth. But that's the way we get his upper lip to stick out. Next we're going to add the teeth. So for that I have 5 rubber bands. And we're going to start on the right hand side. And we're going in just the inner loop from the underside of the upper lip. So we're going to count 3 stitches that we're going to skip. So we're going in that 4th one, just that inner loop, remember, and you're going to do a single crochet in the next stitch, single. We're going to do a total of 4 singles. So that was 2. 3, 4, and now I'm going to reach under the inner loop of the 5th stitch. I'm going to make a slip knot here, so I'm going to pull through everything, grab the loop, pull one through the other, and make a relatively tight slip knot. So now I'm going to need to get this loose band here, or it's not really loose, but this loop that's sticking out. I'm going to go through the underside here, and I'm going to just pull this through, and I'm probably going to have to do more than that, but just to get started, because you do want it totally hidden. It's not like it's on the inside, so people would still be able to see it. So we definitely don't want any of it sticking out. So then what you're going to do is take your teeth and push down so they get angled downward. And now we have his little teeth attached. Now we're ready to attach the nose. So for that you're going to need maybe about 4 white rubber bands. And if you look at pictures of Olaf, his nose basically sits pretty much right on top of his upper lip. So I'm going to go to the center and I'm going to push from the inside out. We go through this first opening here. I'm going to take my loose band from the nose, and then I'm going to go around, maybe not to the very first stitch, but to the next stitch around and push through that. And then I can remove my clip. Take my first white band, I'm going to pull through all 3 loops here on the nose, pull that through to the back. Now I'm leaving this in my fingers, and I have the 1 loop on my hook. I'm going to try and come diagonally up a little bit, grab the other end of that loop, and pull through to the back. So my 2 white loops, I'm going to pull one through the other. I'm going to leave that 1 loop on my hook. Now this time I'm going to come to the top. It's definitely a little bit of a guessing game here as to where to go. I'm going to go through another stitch here. Again, pull through to the back. Try not to get hung up here. So you can see I went through everything, so I just have my 1 loop left on my hook. And again, I'm going to try and come down here. Let's see, maybe diagonally down to right about here. It's definitely not an exact science. I'm going to pull through to the back. I'll do one through the other. And then I think just at the bottom here you can see it's not attached. So I'm going to push out through, and I'll go through another loop, take my next band, pull through to the back. I'm going to go through everything, and then I'll come right over, pull that through, and then you can see how you think it looks. I think it's a little bit angled upward, but I think it's pretty good. And what you can do, and what I did on the other one, was I took a rubber band and looped the nose to the upper lip. I think I will do that again. But for right now, let me just finish here. I'm going to go under a loop on the inside, make a nice and tight slip knot. So you want the upper lip to be up, but you don't want the nose to be angled too high up. Actually, that really doesn't look too bad as far as it goes. But if you feel like your nose is pointing upwards a little bit too far, as I said, you can take an additional band, and then you would just go in the upper lip here, push up through, and then just grab a loop or 2 on the nose here. Take your band, pull through the nose, and down to the bottom, and then just go to the next spot over, reach your hook out, grab that loop, pull through to the back, and then you would just make a nice and tight slip knot with that, and then you would hide your loose loop, and then what that's done is just tack the nose onto the upper lip just to give it a little bit of extra support. In row 12, you're going to need 16 white bands and 4 black. We're going to do 2 more decreases along the sides of the face, and we're doing the slip stitches when we change color. So we're starting with 2 singles. And then the next 2 stitches go together for a decrease. So again, just the outer loop of each. We have 2 more singles, and they're both going to be going under white loops or white stitches. And then we're going to start our black, so remember, ignore the first part. That's not the true stitch. Pull through everything. You're going to do 3 more black. And then you have that one more black stitch to go under, but it's going to be a white band. Pull through everything. And then we have another single. So remember, ignore this first white here. And then we have our second decrease. And now we just have singles for the rest of the way. So you should definitely notice your shape of your head really starting to form here. And it is going to be a little bit on the flat side, just because we're just doing the increases on the sides. But when you get your stuffing in, it's going to fill it out. So here's my last one. In row 13, you're going to need 15 white and 3 black. Again, we're doing 2 decreases. So we have 1 single, and then the next 2 get the decrease. And then we have 2 more singles. Again, they're going under white stitches. And then we start the black, so ignore the first. You can see we're down to just 3 black bands on this row. So 1, 2, and then 3. So we have our last black stitch. It's going to start to get a white, doing that slip stitch. And then you're ignoring the next white. It's not the real stitch there. So then we have our decrease. And then again, the rest of the way across here, we're just going to do singles. So it should be narrowing pretty nicely for you. We're actually almost getting done the head here. Just a couple rows left. I think the head is probably the trickiest part, only because you're doing a lot of color changes, there's increases and decreases, and then I think the biggest pain is having to attach all the extra parts. That's why when I did the body, I wanted to just do one solid thing. I didn't want to make 3 separate balls because it would just be that much more difficult to connect them together. For row 14, you're going to need 14 white and 2 black. Again, we have the 2 decreases. So we're starting with a decrease right away. And then we have 2 white. We're switching to black. Ignore the first. Do your slip stitch. This is actually the last row that we're going to do with black. So here's our second black. Going under the last black stitch, we're changing to white. Do your slip stitch. Ignore the first white. And now the next 2 are going together for your decrease. And then again, let me just put these in a pile. We're going to continue around doing one in each. So this is our second to last row with the head, and as I said, it's our last row with doing any of the black for the mouth. We're just going to do a little bit more narrowing after this row so we can get that neck shape. In row 15, you're going to need 12 bands, and we are going to do 4 decreases. So we have a single to start, and then the next 2 go together, so they're both going to be white. And now you're going to go under black. Remember, you're skipping the first little piece, going under the correct stitch there. We don't have to do any slip stitches because we're not changing color. So we're doing 2 singles. Again, you're ignoring this little white. That's not the real stitch. So this next one's going to be a decrease. So make sure you're going under both loops there. And then again we have 2 singles. It's kind of going around the corner here, so just make sure you're going through the right one here. So that's 1, 2, and then we have our next decrease. Again, 2 in between. Oops. Let's try that again here. We have our last decrease. So all of these decreases are really going to help to narrow this neck down. And that leaves you with 1 stitch left where your clip is, and that's a single. So that completes the head portion here, and you are going to have to stuff it. I know it's kind of a small opening. You could have stuffed it before, but I kind of hate to deal with all the little pieces of polyfil that stick out. Now I am going to go ahead and start to insert my polyfil. I suggest doing little small clumps at a time, especially because you have a little small opening. And you don't want to overfill it, but you do want to have it relatively full so it takes the correct shape, especially with all the increases and the decreases that we had. So first work it up into the top part of the head here. And then as you fill it, just work it into the corners of the cheeks. And I have decided that I'm going to split this tutorial up into 2 sections just because I feel like it's really time consuming just to get the head done. I think that's the most challenging part. So I think that's looking pretty good. Now this concludes our first tutorial for Olaf. I'm going to include the rest of him in a second tutorial. So I will add the links within the video here and also within the description box. So I really hope that everyone loves the way that their Olafs are starting to turn out. I know he looks a little bit silly without the eyeballs, so I am just going to use the Google eyes, and I will hot glue these on, but I'm going to wait to do that to the very end. But let me just go ahead and set them on here if I can do that without them falling. just to give you an idea of what he is going to look like. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. You can post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that way you can stay up to date when I have new tutorials uploaded. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to subscribe to those, post your pictures and comments there too, and if you do post a picture on Instagram, don't forget to tag me. Thanks for watching!